How far would you go for a love that felt just right? What if that love reached out to you from beyond the grave? For one man, a widower lost in a sea of grief, the answer to these questions became abundantly clear. For a nightly visitor brought passion back into his life, but with it, she brought a horrifying secret, carried in the faint, hypnotic glow of a single peony lantern. This is the last story of the Nihon Sandai Kaidan, the three great Japanese ghost stories, usually referred to as Botandoro, the Peony Lantern. I have already told the stories of Okiku's tragedy and Oiwa's revenge, but this story is different, because vengeance is not what Otsuyu is looking for. Our story begins in the heart of the Edo period Japan, in a quiet corner of the city that would one day become Tokyo. Here lived a samurai named Ogiwara Shinsaburo, a man living in a house that had grown too large and too silent since the death of his wife. His world had shrunk to the size of his sorrow, a quiet, grey existence bound by the walls of his empty home. The memories of his late wife were both a comfort and a torment, ghosts of a happiness that felt a lifetime away. His loneliness was a physical presence, a weight that made each breath a conscious effort. Along came the season of Obon, a traditional Buddhist festival dedicated to honoring the spirits of one's ancestors. For 3 days, the veil between the living and the dead is said to grow thin. Lanterns are lit to guide the spirits home. It is, on the surface, a beautiful tradition. But Obon is not only for the beloved dead. It is also a time to acknowledge those who were forgotten, those who died alone, or with something left unfinished. Spirits with no home to return to. And during these nights, they walk just as freely. The world is no longer entirely the domain of the living. It becomes a place where the dead are not as distant as they should be, where something can arrive and no one thinks to question it. On the first night of the festival, as dust began to bleed purple and orange across the sky, he saw them, 2 figures, moving with a grace that seemed to separate them from the evening crowd. A woman of breathtaking beauty, her face pale and perfect like porcelain, and a younger maid carrying a single exquisite lantern. It was a Botandoro, a lantern decorated with a delicate motif of peony flowers. The soft, warm light it cast seemed to dance around the woman, enveloping her in ethereal glow. As they drew near, her eyes met with Shinsaburo. In that instant, the grey world Shinsaburo inhabited exploded into color. He was a samurai, trained in discipline, yet the sight of her dismantled his composure entirely. He felt a pull, an immediate and overwhelming connection that silenced all reason. Mustering a courage he thought he had lost, he rose and approached them. He asked for her name. She smiled, a gentle melancholic expression that captivated him completely. Her name was Otsuyu, Morning Dew, a name as fleeting and beautiful as she appeared to be. Driven by an impulse he didn't understand, Shinsaburo invited her into his home. To his astonishment, she accepted. As she stepped over his threshold, the silent, grieving house seemed to breathe again, filled with her presence and the faint, sweet scent of peonies that clung to her like a perfume. That night, for the first time in months, Shinsaburo did not feel alone. That first meeting was only the beginning. Night after night, the ritual repeated. As the last light of day gave way to twilight, Otsuyu would return, her devoted mate always by her side. The Peony Lantern casting its gentle hypnotic glow. The world outside Shinsaburo's home seemed to fall away the moment she arrived. The sounds of the city, the passage of time, his own lingering grief, it all dissolved in the intoxicating presence of his mysterious woman. Their nights became a blur of passionate embraces and whispered promise of eternal devotion. In her arms, Shinsaburo felt reborn. He was no longer the hollowed-out widower, but a man alive with a love so fierce it felt more real than anything he had ever known. He felt as though the gods themselves had taken pity on his loneliness and sent an angel to save him. Otsuyu and her maid would always arrive at dusk, and without fail, they would depart just before the first hint of dawn. No matter how much he pleaded with her to stay, to greet the morning sun with him, she would always gently refuse. Her eyes filled with that same beautiful melancholy. Completely lost in his newfound romance, Shinsaburo only saw what he wanted to see. His days became a waiting game, a period of restless anticipation for the night. His world, which had once been defined by grief, was now defined by Otsuyu. He slept through the daylight hours, emerging only as evening approached to watch the road for the telltale glow of her peony lantern. His neighbors began to whisper. They saw his health declining, his face growing paler, his eyes becoming sunken, as if her nightly visits were draining the very life from him. Yet Shinsaburo would simply smile, a distant, blissful look on his face, and claim he had never been happier. He was a man possessed, not by a demon, but by a love that was beginning to look like an obsession. The fact that this all started during the very festival that celebrates the return of the spirits should have been a sign. But Shinsaburo, blinded by loneliness, did not realize he had opened his door to a visitor who had crossed a far greater distance than the neighboring street, and who lingered long after the festival had ended. As the affair deepened, the world outside Shinsaburo's home began to take notice. Living next door was an old man, a concerned neighbor who had watched with pity as Shinsaburo withered in his grief. Now he watched with growing suspicion as he seemed to blissfully waste away. Every evening, he would see the two beautiful women arrive, and every night he would hear sounds from Shinsaburo's home. Calm music, soft, almost hypnotic singing, and the sound of Shinsaburo's own voice, full of a laughter the old man hadn't heard in a long time. Yet something was deeply wrong. The samurai's face grew gaunt and pale, with dark sunken rings around his eyes. He looked less like a man revitalized by love and more like a man being slowly consumed. How could a love so happy have such a devastating effect? The suspicion gnawed at the old neighbor. He noticed that while he could hear two female voices inside, he never saw any shadows on the paper screens other than Shinsaburo's own. It was as if the women were phantoms, present in sound but absent in form. Finally, the old man approached Shinsaburo. "Shinsaburo-sama," he began. "Forgive my intrusion, but you do not look well. Who are these visitors who bring you such joy?" Shinsaburo turned. a vacant, ecstatic look in his eyes. "It's a private matter," he replied, his voice soft and distant. "I have never been happier." He retreated back into the shadows of his home, leaving the old man with a cold dread settling in his stomach. The beautiful woman, the Peony Lantern, the night visits that drained the life from Chinsaburo. The pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture of supernatural dread. He became convinced his neighbor was in the thrall of something that had come with the thinning of the veil during Obon. He resolved that the next night he would not just listen, he would look. The sun had set. Just as he had for weeks, the old neighbor saw them coming. The beautiful Otsuyu and her maid, the Peony Lantern casting its pool of soft, inviting light. He watched them disappear inside Shinsaburo's home. Soon, the sounds began. The music, the singing, and Shinsaburo's happy laughter. The old man crept to a small crack in the withered wall of Shinsaburo's home. A tiny knothole that offered a narrow view into the main room. He pressed his eye to the hole, his breath held tight. What he saw would be seared into his memory for the rest of his days. Shinsaburo was there, an arm wrapped around his companion, his face a mask of pure bliss, whispering words of love. But the figure in his arms was not the beautiful porcelain-skinned woman the neighbor saw enter the house. Where her face should have been, there was a skull, its empty sockets staring blankly, its jawbone moving up and down in a grotesque mimicry of speech. The body Shinsaburo was caressing so tenderly was not one of soft flesh, but of dry, brown decaying bone. Long skeletal fingers, stripped of skin and muscle, were stroking Shinsaburo's face. He was not making love to a woman. He was embracing a skeleton. He was whispering his deepest secrets to the dead, completely oblivious, while death itself held him tight and drained the very life from his body. The old man pulled away, his hand clamped over his mouth to stifle a scream, his mind reeling from the sacrilegious horror he had just witnessed. The truth is revealed, but Shinsaburo's journey into the darkness is far from over. He had to be warned, but he would not take it kindly. As soon as dawn broke, the old man rushed to Shinsaburo's house. When Shinsaburo answered, he looked like the man who had been awake for a month, his skin almost translucent. "Shinsaburo-sama, you are in mortal danger," the old man burst out. "The woman you are with, she's not what she seems. I saw you. You were not holding a woman. You were in the arms of a skeleton." Shinsaburo's blissful expression hardened into anger. "You are mad, old man. Jealous of my happiness. How dare you speak such filth about my beloved Otsuyu?" "It's the truth," the neighbor pleaded. "That Peony Lantern bewitches you. If I am mad, then prove it. Where does this woman live? Let us go to her home now, in the daylight." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Shinsaburo's face. He had never known. Seeing his hesitation, the neighbor pressed on. "There is a temple nearby, Shinryo Inn. Let us ask the priest if she is of a noble family. He will surely know them." Reluctantly, Shinsaburo agreed. At the temple, the neighbor explained the nightly visits, the beautiful woman named Otsuyu, And the Peony Lantern. The priest's face grew grave. He said nothing, but beckoned them to follow him to the old cemetery behind the temple. He stopped before a recently placed tombstone. Shinzaburo read the name carved into the stone. His blood ran cold. The name was Otsuyu, and next to the tomb, leaning against the cold stone, was a faded botandoro, a peony lantern. "This is the grave of Lady Otsuyu," the priest said, his voice low and somber. "She was the daughter of a samurai family, a beautiful girl who died of a broken heart not a month ago." The world tilted under Shinzaburo's feet. He fell to his knees, the horror of the truth finally crashing down. The priest helped him up. "Her spirit is restless," he warned. "Her attachment to this world has bound her here, and she has attached herself to you. You are in grave danger of being pulled into her world forever." He took Shinzaburo back to the temple and wrote out several ofuda, holy charms inscribed with powerful Buddhist sutras. "Place these on every door and window of your house," the priest instructed. "They will create a barrier her spirit cannot cross. This is the only way." As dusk fell, Shinzaburo sat in the darkness of his home, now a fortress of fate. Every entrance sealed by the sacred ofuda. He didn't have to wait long. He heard the faint sound of sandals on the path and saw a soft, warm glow approaching. It was them. They reached his door, but stopped, unable to enter. Otsuyu recoiled as if burned. A look of confusion, then sorrow crossed her face.
Shinzaburo-sama,
she called out, her voice as musical as he remembered.
Shinzaburo-sama, why is the door barred? Please, let me in.
Shinzaburo remained silent, his knuckles white.
My love, what is wrong?
Otsuyu's voice began to tremble.
Why do you shut me out?
Night after night, the scene repeated. They would arrive at dusk and stand outside, their initial confusion turning to desperate, heartbreaking pleas. Shinzaburo could hear Otsuyu weeping outside his door for hours. She would call his name, reminding him of their passionate nights, her voice a siren song of love and death. Shinzaburo was trapped in a new kind of hell. He was safe from the clutches of the dead, but tormented by the ghost of a love he now knew to be an illusion, yet still desperately missed. He was safe, but he was miserable. His resolve began to fray. The siege continued. Each evening, the ghost would appear. Each evening, the sorrowful cries would echo in the darkness. And each evening, Shinzaburo would sit inside, torn between self-preservation and the overwhelming gnawing ache of his desire. The safety the charms provided felt like a prison. He knew she was a corpse. He knew her embrace was the embrace of death. But the memory of her illusory beauty, the passion he had felt, was more powerful than the horror. One night, his resistance finally broke. Drunk on sake and sorrow, he heard Otsuyu's voice outside, filled with a profound despair that mirrored his own.
Shinzaburo-sama,
She wept.
do you truly not love me anymore? Let me in. Let me be with you.
In his drunken state, Shinzaburo made a fatal choice. The fear was gone, replaced by an overwhelming wave of love and pity. He staggered to the door. With a trembling hand, he reached up and tore the ofura from its frame. The effect was immediate. He slid the door open. There she stood, her face stained with tears, but her eyes shining with relief.
You came.
She whispered. Forgive me, Shinsabu murmured, his resolve completely dissolved. I could not bear to be without you.
Come with me.
She said, her smile radiant.
Come to my home, where we can be together always, and no one can ever separate us.
Blinded by love and sake, Shinsaburo followed her. She led him through the darkened streets and into the cemetery, to her own grave. But to Shinsaburo's bewitched eyes, in the place where her tombstone used to be, he saw instead the grand entrance to a beautiful manor. When she beckoned him inside, he saw not a cold stone coffin, but a warm, inviting bedchamber. He followed her into the darkness, into her embrace, and into eternity. The next morning, the old neighbor and the priest, fearing the worst, began to search. A terrible suspicion led them to the cemetery. Seeing the fresh dirt around Otsuyu's tomb, the priest had the heavy stone lid pried open. Inside, they found horrifying proof of Shinsaburo's fate. The skeletal remains of Otsuyu lay within the coffin. And entwined with her bones was the lifeless body of Ogiwara Shinsaburo. His face was not frozen in a mask of terror. Instead, he wore an expression of serene, radiant bliss. In the end, he had chosen his love, and in doing so, had joined his ghostly lover in a final, eternal embrace. The story is a powerful exploration of a love so potent it transcends the boundary between life and death. Shinsaburo's longing is so profound that he ultimately chooses an eternity with a ghost over a life without her. But it is also a terrifying horror story about the dangers of obsession. The Peony Lantern itself is a brilliant symbol. Its beautiful light both illuminates and conceals a horrifying truth, representing how our own desire can blind us to the decay and danger that lies just beneath the surface. Shinsaburo isn't just a victim of a ghost. He is a victim of his own inability to move on, his own desperate need to fill the void left by grief. Ultimately, Botandoro serves as a timeless warning. It speaks to the destructive power of unchecked passion and the horrifying consequences that arise when one is unable to distinguish between love and obsession. It reminds us that some attractions are fatal, and that sometimes the most beautiful flower hides the most deadly poison. If you found yourself caught in Shinsaburo's and Otsuyu's story, leave a like and subscribe for more tales of devotion from beyond the grave. Was it true love or a fatal obsession that ultimately sealed Shinsaburo's fate? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you reached this far, thank you for watching.